Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. For those of you that are already jumping on live, we so appreciate you being here and hanging out with us. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from learning from other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Lynette Phillips. Lynette believes in integrating values and beliefs as the cornerstone of your conscious awareness. She is the co-founder of the Fulfilled Mom Movement and curator space for coaching and programming for moms who want to live on purpose, centered around what matters most to them. She is a mother with a story that includes caring for her mother during her cancer treatments, processing death, therapy, and entrepreneurship. Her journey over the years has been filled with challenges, and she is here to talk about how she has learned to manage her life as a leader with an I can attitude. We were just kind of talking about challenges there and going through some of that stuff. What do you think was your greatest challenge throughout your life? And what do you think you learned from that?
I'll work backwards. I think I'm still learning because I'm in a second iteration of my career, right? The pandemic opened up me requiring to learn, how do my children learn, right? At one point in time, they were both back home learning from us. And I am married to an educator, but he also had his audience of students that he was trying to serve as well. And that was his income. So we needed to do that well. So I took that on, and it wasn't my lane, and I tried to learn it. There was so much I felt I needed to learn of myself and what allowed me to best show up in my home and support them when I was probably the primary career outside of the home before the pandemic. Working in hospitality, you work all the holidays, you do certain things. Like, the kids just had to get used to me being around.
Wow.
That was like a huge challenge. I think if I reflect back, obviously, just the time of caring for, I think, a terminally ill parent and coming to realize kind of this person who's always been your caretaker in any form or fashion, right? Is such a growth moment. Like, I think it's extremely challenging. Like, I even tell people I started therapy before my mom passed. It wasn't like, oh, she passed, now I need to go. It was a very short time. Like, literally we were there and was like, what's our game plan for caring for a terminally ill parent? Because I've never done this before and I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling like I don't quite know how I'm going to come out on the other side, and I'm scared. And starting there, and then it was like, oh, it transitioned real quick to now what are my next steps. But to me, my step was, that was a big step. Not only, I think, from a cultural background standpoint, as a woman of color, of being like, hey, I'm not necessarily classified as crazy, right? But I am going to therapy because there's this association, right, and stigma around mental health. And it was like, why wouldn't I serve myself first, or show myself compassion, to have a safe space, to understand what I'm up against and be able to process it, right? And now we laugh sometimes because I'd be like, the first couple of sessions, it was like, well, when you go for a walk, like, are you actually noticing what's happening around you? And I'm like, how much is the copay? Like, what's happening? Like, this is what's going on here. Like, this, because it was so different than like what I expected from that. But now on my journey, 6 years later, and really integrating mindfulness into my life and teaching my kids like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1s, or even for myself, what are 5 things you notice, 4 sounds you hear, like just learning how to quiet the noise.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I was like, I don't know if this is it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I think
one
that
of the
so those all became moments of like stretching outside of my zone
yeah.
of comfort for sure, in the hopes to show up in how I felt I wanted to for my mom,
Yeah.
but also to be very proactive in the storm that I could see ahead. So I think I have a very different approach than, like I said, someone who might have a storm hit them in their life very unexpectedly,
Yeah.
which it's, it still happens. I've had the unexpected losses. My husband and I have had, a pregnancy loss before, and that was definitely like one of those,
Wow.
hey, no, we came here for the ultrasound and you're telling me differently. But even then, my mom was such a big part of that journey. And
Wow.
so now I have to learn what does life look like when unexpected losses hit moving forward, and what can I rely on, going back over different
Yeah.
times of challenges in my life.
Yeah. Definitely. I what's your take, one of the things that first of all, when did you start therapy? How many years ago?
It's right around 6. So it was literally, I don't even think we were 2 weeks before my mom passed. Like, one of the conversations I had with her was, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and go see a therapist. And why, not to put that on her, but it was more like, I've never done this before. I've never took care of a terminally ill parent, and I want to do some work on me, because I didn't want her to feel like, I'm driving her crazy. Whereas, like,
Yeah.
it's not that. And of course, she was very supportive, like, do what you need to do for you. And luckily, I've been with the same provider over the years who has seen kind of, hey, and even challenged me in some of these hyper productive modes, right? Of like, this is amazing that you are graduating school, having another kid, and doing other things. Can we do some of this baseline stuff still? Can you still hold yourself to be present and hold
Wow.
space? And what are you going to do? He knows probably the one area that I probably experienced burnout in, because he's like, you are all in on this momming. He's like, that's where, your blind spot for burnout. It's like, you can go endless with work and creativity, but like, you just want to not fail at that. And I was like, "Ew, okay. Now I know why I'm paying you."
Yeah. There you go. There you go. I I love that you kind of hinted slightly about how it was a little more taboo back then, 6 years ago, to be voicing about a therapist versus now. Now people just on the regular are like, my therapist, my coach,
Yeah.
whatever it is, wherever they're seeking out, external mental and emotional health. And you're in that arena along with myself as far as being a coach and,
Yeah.
helping people with their mental and emotional mindsets. What is your thought on, self development? When did you first come across personal growth? Was that with the therapist, or were you already kind of dabbling in that previously? Or what's your personal growth story?
It's always been a part of me. And I would say, um, taking on very early on in life, always taking leadership roles. I was the quintessential biased position, though, where people always call me bossy sometimes, right? And be like, oh, here come Miss Bossy. Even with my two sisters, if the three of us are in the same space, people naturally say, are you the oldest? Because I'm usually helping navigate what's happening. Like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
if we're on a trip or doing something like that. So
Where do you
for
fall
me,
really? Where do you fall really? Are
I'm the
you
youngest, I'm the baby, but I'm always the one that's like out front, or like, let's lead, or here's where we're going for dinner. It's already been decided, and people just follow
yes.
along, kind of thing. And I think when I really got into self-development was when some opportunities shared itself and how I could grow as a leader, because I was really, really doing it right for a world-renowned brand, and people were taking a risk on me. And I really out of fear of losing my job at some point in time of like, if you're not a good leader, should you be a leader? And some people get that opportunity and they get to stay in that position, and they shouldn't. But for me, it was, I owe it to myself to be a good leader, and
Yeah.
then it's going to have an impact on others as well. And I think that's when it was like, oh, I love listening, I like reading books about it, I love going to conferences, I love these areas and spaces of growth. And then it has sustained me now. Like, it's what I know, that is a lifelong journey. Like, you will always be a learner of something, because sometimes I think we think learning means I have to learn a new skill. I want to get really good at what I'm really good at. Like what, what I'm here to do, right? When I think about coaching, if I don't go and learn more as research talks about approaches or different aspects of it, right? Group coaching is very different than one-to-one coaching. If I'm not learning how to master those skills and I'm settling in like I'm good enough, that's so not fair. I'm doing a disservice to myself and to those who I'm serving, as their coach. And so now for me, it's like this is just the fabric, like it's part of the tapestry. It's quintessential. It's like oxygen for us, for
Yeah,
anyone. I think it's just what is sometimes your beliefs around learning, growth, development, and how you see yourself. What's the conversations you start to tell yourself when you're lacking on something? Like for me, it now becomes a challenge of like, I want to get better at that. How do I do that? If I'm interested in it, how do I get better at that?
definitely. I agree with you.